And welcome back to another episode of Brand New Gig. I used new music today, if you're there waiting in the queue, and I hadn't heard it before, so that was a surprise to us all. But joining me today is the managing editor over at Good Bull Hunting. He provides both useful and useless breakdowns, and he is also the blueprint for masterful twittering. I'm sure you all know and love him. Join me in welcoming Robert Behrens.
Howdy, glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. If you're here for the first time, we are so happy to have you. And if you are back for another week, keep the trend alive. We are still undefeated, so I'm still attributing all of these wins to you guys. We had some technical difficulties to start, but since it's a bye week, this is the only way they can get A&M to lose. So we're gonna leave it at that. But we are here today. We are so excited. It is a bye week, so it's going to look a little bit different, but I'm excited to get into it with a very fun guest. Robert, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Yeah, kind of like you said, it's kind of not sure what to do with ourselves after having 5 games in a row, and then now you just kind of look around and I guess we'll just like go to work and hang out with our families and do everything that we're supposed to be doing with our lives this week.
Right. I guess we have to watch football with extra so team. But as we all know, well, this is interesting because I ask the people what they're stressed about going into the weekend, how we can talk them off the ledge. It's really hard to find something to be stressed about when your team is not taking the field, which is nice. I think it's a blessing. But I figured since you've been around the program probably a little bit longer than I have,
Mhm.
that you might offer the people just some remedy for anyone who's still feeling a little bit like they're waiting for the other shoe to drop, like there's a devil and an angel just sitting on their shoulder. What can you tell the people?
I would tell them probably the same thing that I told myself maybe a month ago, because I kind of found myself. I think real like the Auburn game was like just such a stressful watch, and but you saw this team kind of keep defying what they normally do,
Yeah.
and winning these games that in previous years we found ways to lose, and all of a sudden we were finding our ways to win. Um, and so I kind of looked at myself in the mirror and I said, "It's like, look, we don't know where the season is going to go from here, but this could be something really great." And and if it does turn out to be something really great, do you want to look back on it and say that you bought in and that you enjoyed the ride? Or do you want to look back and say, well, I was just stressed the entire time and I was just, like you said, waiting for the other shoe to drop? And I think you could have the potential of looking back and saying, man, like this was like a season for for the record books, and I didn't really even like take the time to soak it in for what it was. So like, do we know that what we're going to do from here? No. Like you said, I mean, we're only a year removed from sitting here being 7-1, being also undefeated in the
Yep.
SEC, and
Yep.
things going horribly down the stretch. Now, I don't think that's going to happen this time, but no matter what happens, yeah, like just buy in and just enjoy the ride, and try to appreciate whatever this season turns out to be.
Yeah, because I thought at the beginning of the season, the more that we won, the more confident I would feel. And I've noticed that that's not the case. But at the same time, I also know from watching football, however many years it's been, a loss is going to be disappointing no matter what. If a loss happens to come down the road, it's going to suck whether or not I bought in. So I might as well just commit
Yep.
100% and roll with the punches because this is not a football team you get to witness every year. This is not a season that just comes and goes. Like this is one, at least at this point, and what I'm expecting will be from this point out one that you'll probably tell your kids and your grandkids about and look back very fondly on. Knock on wood, obviously, but we're just gonna keep rolling with it. And we got a bye week, so we can at least go 1 week without fully jumping off the ledge, which I'm sure everyone's been at least one point this season. But that's all I have to address because there's only so much you can do with the bye. So I just advise everyone to sit back and enjoy a weekend of football that your team cannot get injured during, and that nothing is at stake for this weekend. You just get to hate watch whoever you want, or maybe you can root for some underdogs, whatever your quota is. But we can now get into what I would call a fairly fun game at LSU. I don't know if you had some fun watching
Understatement
that
of the
one.
season, maybe.
But based on a couple captions we saw from some players, I think they enjoyed the showing just as much as we did. I happened to be there, so I
Awesome.
think that was probably my favorite away game that I've ever been to. Granted, not many of the ones I've been to have been wins, so it's not like I'm picking from a lot of options here. But I think the first point I want, or I think the first question I want to ask, because going into the half of that game, maybe people felt a little uneasy. Where was your head at?
I was in a surprisingly optimistic place because we've all been there, especially in Death Valley, seeing anything and everything that can go wrong there. And look, plenty went wrong in that first half, which we don't even have to rehash. But I remember sitting there at halftime and just thinking, I felt like we were the better team. I know we were losing on the scoreboard, but that was because of self-inflicted wounds almost exclusively. And I just said, it's like, look, it's like pretty much every game this season, this team has come out in the second half and just kind of shut people down. And so I think we're going to do it again. I think we're going to win. And now I didn't expect 35-7 in the second half like what we got. I don't think anyone maybe outside of that locker room could have expected that. But man, yeah, that was a joy to watch, to put it lightly.
So, Josh Payton, he always talks about box stats, and you go into halftime, you had two turnovers and a bunch of other miscues. And I went into the bathroom at Death Valley and I called my dad and I was freaking out because I'm still a little inexperienced. I get a little overly emotional about these things. And he said the same thing as you. He was like, right now it's just A&M versus A&M. This team is far and away better than whatever is on the other side of the field. And there's not been a game this season where we haven't turned it around in the second half. So just take a breath, go back out there, figure it out. We will be okay. And then he texts me like midway through the third or midway through the fourth, and he just like told you.
Yep.
So it really is. I mean, everyone loves to tweet about it and talk about it and joke about it, but Mike Elko's second half adjustments are probably second to none. A privilege that we've been missing for a very long time.
Yeah. I mean, that was something. Obviously, defensively, we saw a lot in the early years with Jimbo Fisher, and I think you're seeing it now. And for a long time, it was just schematically kind of adjusting to whatever the other team's offense was doing. But I think with this team in particular, those adjustments, it's not just schematic. It's you just see A&M, I feel like, be the more physical team and be the more mentally strong team. And I think that's as much, to blame as anything for this
Yeah.
team really just, I think, outlasting their opponents and really, I think, just dominating their opponents down the stretch where they just say, we're better than you. We're going to make more plays than you. We're going to be more physical than you. And over the course of 4 hours, we're going to wear you out. And that's like, that's what Alabama did for under Saban for years. I'm not
Oh, yeah.
saying this is a Nick Saban Alabama level team, but I think it's that same recipe where at some point you just wear teams out and they kind of give up.
Oh, and that's the mentality. I mean, again, no one's saying this is Saban, no one's saying this is Bama, but if you want to be at that level, it starts mentally, it starts physically. I think this game more than any game, especially, is where we saw it become very personal for Tommy Moffitt,
Yep.
who has been a true testament of not seeing a ton of names in our injury report, not seeing a deflation coming out of the locker room in the second half. What has Tommy Moffitt meant to you? This is a fun question.
Yeah.
How has he affected you and just your overview on this team?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest testament you can give to like what he means to a program is I remember, here almost 2 years ago, shortly after we hired Mike Elko, when they announced that he was bringing on Tommy Moffitt, I think every LSU fan that I knew, be it in person or Twitter, as soon as they saw that we were hiring him, they were just like, "Oh crap!" But I mean, because he was that program for like 20 years, and he oversaw the development of that team that year in year out for years and years was always like the most physical team on the field. Um, and so I think, and look, it's like I think sometimes it's easy to give too much credit or put too much blame on strength and conditioning, um, because yeah, like we've had some insane, I'll call it injury luck this year because I think some of it does come down to that.
For sure.
But absolutely, I think you look at this team and the physicality that they play with. I think the way that they are able to finish games, um, both physically and mentally, and I think it does come down to just like those workouts, but also I think it's just Moffitt combined with Mike Elko and this entire staff, just that mindset and that culture that they've set of like the hard work, the commitment, that grind, as they like to say, um, that has been going on there. It didn't start in September when we played our first game. This started, you know, 22 months ago when Mike Elko got the job, and I think it's the cumulative effect of that that you're really starting to see take hold on the field.
Well, I mean, perfectly. It's like a bread and butter where they're both great, but then you put them together and it's magnificent. And your sentiment as soon as he got hired away from LSU, you see all these LSU fans freaking out. Now you can blame the firing of Brian Kelly on whoever you want. I'm not going to say A&M is going to take credit for it, but they're looking for a new coach. One of the first things you saw online is whoever's the new coach begging him to get Tommy Moffitt back. And we'll just talk about it briefly because this is not our wheelhouse, not our circus, not our monkeys. But they are looking for a new head coach. The governor is involved. Scott Woodward is apparently not involved. We had Scott Woodward in our program for a little bit. Just give your 2 cents on what you've seen at least come out of there so far, where you maybe see this heading.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because I mean I think most folks who are really into college football rank that LSU job very, very highly.
Oh,
There's because ever since Nick Saban, Brian Kelly's the first coach to not win a national title there. And you just look at the place kind of recruits itself. The fan base, the stadium. There's just like A&M in a lot of ways. They check so many boxes,
mhm.
but unlike A&M, they have a lot of the hardware to back it up in recent seasons. But like you touched on it. A lot of the dynamics at play right now over there seem like such a mess because even on the A&M side, we've talked about kind of the lack of alignment from leadership and how that has, in some ways probably negatively affected our program, be it churn with the athletic director, churn with the university president or donors or whoever. And then you look at LSU and they don't have a university president right now. um, it sounds like they are not going to have an athletic director much longer if he's supposedly not involved at all in the coaching search. And yeah, and to have the governor of the state being the one that's speaking out on all this is such a strange look. And look, like no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, I think we can all agree that like we don't want our politicians being the ones that have their hands in our head coaching hires. Those should be two separate arguments altogether. Because, and if nothing else, just as you're trying to attract your next head coach, like you want them to feel like they're walking into a normal, stable situation where they're going to have resources at their disposal. Everyone's going to be rowing in the same direction. And it just feels like it's anything but over there right now. So look, we may look back on this in 6 months and just kind of say that was a crazy time, but look who they got, and now they're probably set up for success. But certainly, like it's hard to look at it and say, like, look, there's going to be, I think, candidates who we all thought would have been like really interested in that job that all of a sudden may
Yeah,
decide that they're pretty comfortable where they are.
it's because I think as soon as it happened, teams like Florida and Penn State are just like slamming their fists on the table because that is probably one of the most highly sought out jobs at any
Yeah,
point. And so they kind of just come second to that. But now maybe they're creeping up a little bit because this is not the most attractive of situations to anyone who's looking to come into a job that already has such high expectations. So you already are going to have that on your shoulders, as attractive as it is. It's a circus, as I said. I am very thankful that they are not my monkeys. Our monkeys, I shouldn't call them monkeys. Maybe that's not. Our program right now is facing what, on the flip side, 2 years ago, a lot of these other programs are facing. Now we're in a situation where it would be more shocking than not if we didn't make the playoffs. I don't feel crazy to say that at this
No,
point.
I think that's accurate.
And so going out of Death Valley, obviously a win over LSU is big in itself. Just narrowing it down, getting that in the win column, beating LSU, no matter where their fans want to say they were at, no matter how much they want to say they're 1 foot out the door, a win is a win, and it was a statement win at that. But outside of that, it meant a lot for our program and the direction that we're heading as a whole. So I want to kind of hear what your breakdown is of what it means, not just to win one more game and be one step closer for this season, but just where Elko wants to take this program and where you think he's going to continue to take it.
Yeah, it's kind of odd the mind games we play with ourselves because I think a lot of us probably went into this year almost saying like, look, just improve on last season. Like, don't be Texas 8-4,
Yeah.
and like anything above that would be great. Um, but then like you beat Notre Dame, you win a couple more, and all of a sudden we all say, well, man, we might be able to make it into the playoff. And now all of a sudden we sit here at 8-0, and like you said, like the playoff, it's not. I'm not going to say it's a foregone conclusion yet, but it's darn close. And so now all of a sudden you're like, well, man, like we need to get to Atlanta. Like it's we need to not get to the playoff. We need to like see how far we can go in the playoff. And it's funny how quickly those expectations kind of snowball just with each passing win. Um, but yeah, I would say for an A&M fan, it does feel a little bit like kind of uncharted waters, because I feel like a year ago I touched on it. We were 7-1. We were undefeated in
Mhm.
the SEC at that point. Kind of felt like you had the inside track, in the SEC maybe to the playoff, and it didn't go well. But even then, I think most of us acknowledge that team did not feel as rock solid as this one does. That one,
Oh,
you kind of
yes.
felt like you saw some of the chinks in the armor. We were having them back and forth at quarterback. I think
Mhm.
that the defense definitely was struggling a lot more. The offense wasn't as dynamic as what this one is.
Yeah,
Um,
losing Moss felt way bigger last year than I think it
yeah,
does right now.
and so I think even though like record wise, standings wise, you can make the justification the two weren't different. I think this one definitely feels different. And then I guess I harken back to some of the bigger, more successful seasons in recent past. And in 2020, you lost to Bama in week 2, and so you kind of spent the whole season trying to get back into
Mhm.
playoff contention and end up falling just short. And of course, that was in the 14 playoff era. And then even rewind back to 2012, where as much as that Johnny Heisman season was amazing, and by the end of the year, you felt like A&M was playing like one of the best teams in college football. They had 2 losses relatively early, and so and then, of course that was pre-playoff era entirely. And so even as good as you felt about that team and the way that season ended and the trajectory for the program, you kind of knew like, okay, but this is not a team
It's a
that's
step short.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're not going to go to the SEC championship. We're not going to be playing
Mhm.
for a national title. So to enter November still not only having all of that in the cards, but saying and it's not just A&M fans saying, "Oh, it's possible." It's like the entire college football media saying like A&M might be the best team in the country right now, which is just wild
Say out
to
loud.
say and to
Yeah.
hear.
Because
Um,
it is always a, I think the national media, even more so than Aggies themselves, are always waiting for the other shoe to drop for A&M. Because as you said, A&M 8-4 is the standard, but you're starting to hear it less and less because we've given ourselves so much breathing room. See,
yeah,
it's always going to be there. It's always going to be there.
yeah. Well, I go back to as Josh Pate always says that people try to combine could not and have not. You
Yeah.
know, is just because someone has not done something means that they can't do something. And look, Aggies, we've been as bad as anybody about kind of belittling this team because of past scars, and I hope more and more people are coming away from that. And that's not to say that you can never be bitter ever again. You can never, be cynical ever again. But for this team, for this season, I think it's time for folks to just say, look, it's like just go all in and buy into this team, enjoy the ride, and
Till the wheels fall.
yeah, it's like you don't know how often these are going to come around. You hope that with what Mike Elko is building, this is going to become something that we're all experiencing several more times in the future. Um, but you never know when these opportunities are going to come. You never know, like, maybe there are times where we're still good, but we always say, oh, but like no team was as good as that team that season. And so just enjoy it when it's here.
For me, before this season, it was always 2012, and I think that's probably where a lot of Aggies started rooting for this team too, if
Yeah,
not just because
yeah,
they went to school here. And this, I'm not going to make direct comparisons, but this feels very similar in the sense of, it's different. Even
yeah,
just
yeah,
comparing last year to this year, it there are things that have repeated, like we talked about Moss getting injured. That happened last year, that happened this year. Obviously, no one wanted to see that happen, but just things like that, the way that we've responded has been a complete 180.
yeah. And I think it's the combination of this team they have, I mean, the players and the scheme, I think, to match up with anybody. But like you said, I think a lot of it's also just that mental makeup, and some of it is, I think, those players and that staff having gone through the
Yeah.
struggles of a year ago, and I think seeing maybe some of the missteps they took, and then also going through an off season saying we're going to do whatever it takes to not have that happen again. But it's also just a snowball effect of, these guys went to South Bend and pulled out that game that it just felt like there was no reason we should have won in a lot of ways. And at some point, you just have that confidence of no matter what happens, no matter who the opponent is, where it is, how the game plays out. I think they're just confident that they're going to go out there and they're going to do what it takes to win, and they're going to do it multiple different ways. And as a fan, like that's a great place to be. Just not only to have the team believe that, but like I said, I feel like it's kind of a rarity for me is that we're sitting there in a road game down at halftime, and I was like, no, we're good. Like it was frustrating watching that first half, but like at no point was I like, we're gonna blow this, we
Right.
suck, whatever. It was just no. I mean, go out there, like play like you're the better team, which you are, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and last year, you almost had to have complimentary football for us to even have a chance to win those games, especially in the end. Right now, from what we've played every style of football imaginable. We've seen the offense kind of stutter a bit. We've seen the defense not play to their potential, and we've still come out of every game with a win. And that's a crazy sight to see in itself. And we aren't relying on one piece anymore. I think that's something I want to ask you about is just the versatility on both sides of the ball. I mean, you're not relying solely on the tailback room or on Marcel to have the game of his life. Like there are guys everywhere on both sides of the field that have stepped up, especially a lot of younger guys that didn't get a lot of playing time last year, transferred in this year, some true freshmen. Like I want to hear just what the mentality kind of screams from you as a fan and also just some younger guys as specifically that have stuck out.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is because A&M has always had like components of our team that were like that were elite.
Mhm.
I mean, and this year's no exception. You look at Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion in the receiving game
Yeah.
like that. I I would struggle to name a better wide receiver combo in the country. And then you look at what A&M is doing in the pass rush with Cassius Howell and that entire unit.
Oh,
Um, you know, like just a joy to watch. But I think the thing that really makes the biggest difference is that not only do they have those elite units, but you don't have and like Achilles heel across the
Yeah,
entire team. There's no position group that you say, but man, like these guys are just killing us every single week, and we're having to like game plan around, teams
Slack.
targeting
Yeah,
them. I feel like across the board, you've got, if not playmakers, at least like rock solid guys that are doing their job every week. And that's the thing that allows you to do kind of what you said is play whatever style of football you need to play each week, just depending on what the game is asking of you.
right.
Because like this team is good enough to win multiple ways. And what's crazy is that you talk about looking at a lot of the young guys, and I can't remember a time where like I struggle to name a true freshman that's just like that's out there like starting, making like a huge difference. There are certainly guys that have gotten playing time. You can look at
Mhm.
like Marco Jones or Landon Rink, um, but I don't think there's a single true freshman in the starting lineup. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
No, I think you're
Um,
right on that because Moro is a red. No,
well, no, you're right. Morrow is
is
true freshman. So,
freshman.
yeah, he's another
Okay.
one. That's certainly, and I think we're going to be seeing more and more of him because just every time he's out there, you just go, whoa, that was nice.
Well, yeah, because it's crazy because I think he was fifth on the depth chart if you were looking at running backs to start the year.
Yeah, well, and Mike Elko has talked about on his radio show, and I think even in press conferences of he's kind of forced their hand in finding ways to get him on the field because just they're watching him in practice and saying every time this guy touches the ball, something good happens.
How can you
So
not?
yeah. At some point, you're like, we're he's going to end up in the portal if if we don't get him out there. But no, but I think that's a testament to I mean, just what this team has done in the portal and addressing a lot of those areas where maybe otherwise you might have been relying more on youth. But I think it's also um, just development of the guys that are on the roster, and
Mhm.
because look, like A&M had for years where we were recruiting really well, um, year over year, but inevitably like you were still seeing like two or three true freshmen in the starting lineup every year, which can be exciting because you say, oh, like these guys are going to be here for 3-4 years, and imagine how great they're going to be. um, but when that's happening every single season, at some point you're like, okay, but why are we not like loaded up with juniors and seniors that are
Why is
starting?
it not? Yeah, why is it not developing?
Yeah, and this is like the oldest A&M team I can recall, and some of that's portal, but a lot of that is just guys who have been here.
Mhm.
Which, especially knowing that there was a coaching change kind of halfway through a lot of those guys'
Yeah.
careers, is really impressive.
Well, I think a lot when I think of age and development and guys who have really committed, I was gonna bring this up with you, but D line sticks out, especially guys like Regis and Hicks, who have been here a long time and have been touted to be really good, and they just haven't quite reached their ceiling yet. And I feel like we're seeing a lot of that this year, which is crazy because last year you have three guys who go to the NFL, and I think anyone would say that this year's D line is better than last year's,
Oh yeah,
just in terms of
absolutely.
numbers,
Now,
production.
it's like I will say, like, not to take anything away from this year's defensive line, but I do think some of that too is this year's secondary is much better than last year's was.
Yes.
And so it's like that extra second or a second and a half that you're actually able to cover the receivers can make a huge difference as far as sack totals go. Um,
Oh, yeah. I
but
think
I
a
mean,
lot.
yeah, but that's all part of it. It's like those units don't play in silos.
Right, it is like a you kind of build off one another. That's our secondary last year was probably what you're talking about, one of those Achilles heels where it's like you're just holding your breath every time someone passes the ball down there because guys like Des Ricks are performing way better this year than they were last year. Des Ricks is someone who I have full confidence in, and I could not say that at all last year.
Yeah, that's been a great story seeing him. I mean, I like all due respect to Will Lee, I would say you could argue that like Des Ricks may be our best corner.
I was talking about that with someone too because Will Lee performed great last year, and he was a name that everyone was talking about going into this year. But you can make a case for both, which is a great problem to have.
Yeah, and look, like we all said in the offseason, like we all kind of looked at who A&M brought in via the portal as DBs, and we were all kind of saying, I hope those guys pan out because we kind of didn't want to see Des Ricks back on the field.
Yeah.
But I mean, and look, and I'm not trying to bag on the guy, but
No,
I
yeah.
but even the coaches acknowledge they're like, look, like we kind of threw him out there last year when he wasn't ready.
Mhm.
And they almost said it as if like they did a disservice to him.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, so it's been super cool to see him really like take that next step and really start showing all that potential, which was why he was a 5-star recruit out of high school and why A&M brought him over from Alabama.
That room we talked about in the running back room, I feel like that also applies at linebacker. I mean, we have Sanford who's making reps. Scooby was out for a bit. Torian York obviously is the leader of that squad, probably the whole defense. But I mean, you have positions everywhere where you are causing problems because there aren't enough reps to go around.
Yeah, which is a fantastic problem to have, right?
Well,
Yeah, because like
it
because we
is,
were
yeah.
all, I think we were all worried like when Scooby went down against Notre Dame, and
Mhm.
you kind of worry like how long is he going to be out, and because linebacker was a place where just from the outside perspective, you kind of looked at it and thought we might be a little thin.
Mhm.
Yeah, and like you said, then Sanford played so well that you said like we can't take him off the field entirely, and it just feels like it's just a roster of guys, like obviously extremely talented players, but also a roster of guys who were tired of losing, and I think kind of just really bought into like true like the team aspect and the aspect of like doing like all the things that like basically trusting the coaches and saying like we're gonna do all the things that you tell us it takes to win, because I think this has been a very talented roster for a long time. I think it hasn't always been guys that really like played for each other and guys that really did, I think, everything that it takes to be a winning program. And I'm not trying to bag on those players necessarily. I think a lot of that is just comes from top down leadership,
Yeah.
of just setting the standard of what the expectations are, and then holding people accountable for whether or not they live up to that.
Yes, because I think as an Aggie, it's very easy to kind of get caught up in the bubble of what you expect from your team. So sometimes I have to step outside of that. And I understand from just a national perspective or someone who is not an Aggie, this team has had every resource at its hands to win a national championship. I don't think that
Yeah,
is something that anyone would argue with. We have the facilities, the revenue, the state of Texas in itself. I mean
yeah,
I don't know if there's many better to be in, and we just haven't gotten the job done. And like you said, top down leadership. If you have guys buying in because of XYZ and not because of Texas A&M, you're not going to win games. I just don't think there's a way to outplay that, and that might be the intangible that feels different about this year. Is every single guy on the field looks and plays 100% bought in.
yeah. Well, and like one of the things that always I think catches my attention is they'll set up the little cameras in the tunnel after each game where they have the players like answer a different question,
Mhm.
um, but almost always, like even though it may not be a part of the prompt, you'll already hear whether it's Torian York or Mario Craver or any number of other guys, like they'll talk about like how they're already thinking about the next week's game.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's such a big thing. Like, obviously those guys get excited when they win, they celebrate as they deserve to. But I think they've been very good about having the right mindset of like every single time, like as soon as one game is over, they're immediately turning that page and saying, like, because I think this team is not, they're just kind of wired differently, as
Mhm.
you said, that like they've got bigger goals than one win on any given Saturday. And so it's been exciting to see, and it's we just hope to hope it keeps going for a bunch more weeks.
Yeah, because I think it clicked after Notre Dame, which was the first time we really saw, and I think they already knew this, but for it to actually come to fruition of there's not a single game on the rest of our schedule that we can't win, because I would find it very hard pressed for you to find a handful of people that were confident we were going to go into South Bend and win that game, which is fine. I understand. I was in the same boat. I predicted us to lose that game. I'll be the first to say it. But having that click and then just hearing them interview after so many games saying, we know what it felt like last year to have it in our hands and just let the ball drop, and we don't want to feel that again.
Yeah, and look, and I'll be the first one to say I was still skeptical after that game, because as fun as that game was, like I sat there and I said, okay, it's like it was great, but it was one
Because we
game
escaped.
on the
And
final play. Yeah, you won
yeah,
by this much, and I was like, okay, and that was a massive win that everyone just spent days and days and days telling them how great it was. I was like, let's see what you do against Auburn in 2 weeks,
mm-hmm.
because I guess that was my mindset at the time. Is like, because if you go out and you lose to Auburn, you kind of just wasted all the goodwill you had
It
from
just
that
is a
other
wash.
win. And so to see them win that game wasn't a perfect performance either. But then to just keep going and just kind of just keep stacking performances, it's it's I feel like it's healed a lot of Aggie souls over the past 2 months.
I would like to think so too, mine included. I feel like I breathe a little easier each game. I
Yeah,
mean, you said this at halftime. This is not a feeling I would have had last year if the score were the exact same. So
yeah.
I
Oh
breathe
yeah.
a
Like
little
halftime of
easier.
LSU last year, I was like, I not that I ever turn off the game early. I always, even if I'm
Yeah,
watching in misery, I always watch the full game. But there's definitely been half times where I'm like, I'm gonna watch the second half, but I don't really want to.
right. I will sit here, but if I wasn't,
Against
yeah,
my will. Yeah.
yeah. Which is, I think a lot of Aggies, more so than most other fan bases, are very committed and will stay till the end and will watch the whole game. Doesn't mean we enjoy it though. This
Yeah.
year though, not different story. I would say we're all enjoying it up to this point.
Yeah, yeah. And now it's just, yeah, going to the bye week. And um the bye week's always, it's like I feel like right now is the worst part of the bye week, because we're so used to having a game to look forward to, and you kind of just feel like it's there's not as much going on. But the bye week Saturdays, especially coming off of a win, when you feel really good about what your team is doing, it's really great to just watch other teams and kind of watch the chaos happen all around you. And if your rival loses, you can fully like troll them, consequence free. And if they win, who cares? Like we're 8-0, so y'all do whatever you want.
Exactly. At this point, we would start talking about whatever games coming up, but there's no game. So I guess we can kind of just break down. I was thinking we do a little bit of some superlatives, because if we're being optimistic here, I think we're kind of at a mid-season point. If we're going to play 16 games, right? No, I mean we can talk playoffs. Have there's a whole other story there, but I would like to think that this team has a lot more than 4 games in them. So we can kind of talk about where we're at this point in the season. First superlative, just your MVP, offense and defense.
Oh, let's
Which I
see.
mean, we have. We'll go through a lot because I feel like you can name every single guy who gets playing time because
Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah. In fact, especially on offense, there's so many guys that have done so much. I think I will still say, um, I'll probably go with Casey Concepcion, because obviously done amazing things as a receiver, been a game changer in the return game,
Mhm.
which I'll lump in as well. But you also he was one of the guys that throughout the offseason, you heard people talk about just I think the professional approach and the drive that he had, and just as a teammate,
Yeah,
and kind of setting the tone for that position room in the offense. And I'll tell you, I think the last time I heard that about an A&M receiver was Christian Kirk. Um, and
mhm.
I'm not saying those guys are the same. They kind of have different styles. But I think it's that same drive and like passion and desire to win that bleeds over to everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I think even beyond production, I feel like he's been a guy that's really just been a good, I think, voice in the room for that group.
Mhm. I was making the same comparison preseason because I feel like Kirk was our last true wide receiver one.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't really had a guy stand out from that position group. And I mean, again, you said they're not the same guy. I get it. But in terms of both on field production and also just seniority and leadership that a guy would bring to a team, Casey has been that and more.
Yeah. Yeah. And then and on defense, I don't see how you don't say Cassius Howell.
Yeah, that's it kind of goes
It,
without saying.
that's just one of those where I mean there are a few things that are more fun to watch than just a defensive end that can like that just dominates the entire game. Now it can be frustrating because you see him get held for 2/3 of the game as well.
Yeah,
But
that's why you make the Myles Garrett
that's just
comparison.
yeah. No, oh my gosh, like that. Like Miles was even worse. But yeah, but that's just part of the experience. But yeah, I mean it's that's just such a cheat code for a defense because we saw it against LSU that A&M didn't even blitz that much. Like
Oh, yeah.
they had a lot of times where they'd bring six guys up to the line, but then they'd drop two of them and they would just rush four and they'd still get pressure because because they're disguising which guys are coming, or you just have Cassius Howell or other guys just winning one on one.
Yeah.
And when you can get pressure with four blitzers or four pass rushers, like that makes the defensive coach's job real easy. And so it's just been nice because last year I think we saw the potential that we had like with Nick Scorton with Shamar Stewart, where like you saw the skills and you saw them getting to the quarterback, and it just didn't translate in, into
A
sacks.
loss. Yeah.
Yeah, and so to kind of come out of the other side of that, and it's been like so many other aspects of this season so far, just such a breath of fresh air for an A&M fan.
Yes, because I came into the season, obviously lots of different pinpoints from last year, and that was a big one that stuck out to me of, okay, on paper, we're losing tons of production. This is something that I'm worried about, slash maybe just a question mark I have. But at the same time, we had 25 sacks last year, if I'm correct,
Mm-hmm.
and I think 26 missed sacks. So we missed on more times than we got.
That's not a good percentage.
No, not a good percentage. And I mean, because I was just looking up numbers, and I think 10 of the 12 teams from last year had 32 or more sacks. This year, I think we're already at more than we had last year as a whole.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure we're at 32.
Yeah. So I think Cassius, I think, is at 9.5.
Yeah, yeah.
So we had a question mark. I feel like the question mark is now a period.
Oh
So
yeah. And that's one of those where the best part is that now every team we're facing, like when they're doing their offensive game plan, part of it is how do we stop this guy? And that could be they're not calling as many downfield routes, or they don't have a running back running into the flat on a route because they're keeping them in pass protection. And so yeah, it's like anytime you have guys that the other team has to change their game plan around, yeah, it just makes your job that much easier.
or you the end zone and your defense is producing better than they have been. So, second superlative, most improved. This can be on either side of the ball.
Defense, I think we already talked about it. I think it's Des Ricks for sure.
Mhm.
Just going from in that Las Vegas Bowl, an absolute liability at corner to a guy who's hasn't been perfect, but for the most part been really good for this team all year. And then offensively, I'm I might cheat a little bit. I think I'll just say offensive line as a whole.
Yeah.
And that's not to say they were bad last year. I think last year they were serviceable, but I think this year
Mhm.
has gone to like legitimately one of the top offensive lines in the country, which I think we all kind of saw the potential for that because you brought everybody back.
Mhm.
But that doesn't always translate. Experience can mean a lot, or experience can mean nothing sometimes. That's just the nature of college football. But kind of like we talked about, with that having an elite pass rush on defense. If you got an offensive line that, like, I mean, they've gone several weeks, I think now, where it's like we basically don't even give up a tackle for loss.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it's been 0 for the past 2 games at least.
yeah, and that, like, once again, that just makes it so much easier for an offense when you're not working from 1st and 12 or 3rd and 9 uh, all game. Then it opens up the playbook, and like it makes offensive coordinators look really, really smart when they have an offensive line that protects the quarterback, and
Mhm,
it allows you to get yardage in the run game. And and once again, like, obviously, I think Colin Klein is doing a great job,
mhm,
but it's that merging of the two. Of He's got a good offensive line, he's got a good quarterback, he's got good skill position players,
right.
and you take all that and put it in a system that is built to take advantage of it, and all of a sudden you look real smart.
Well, and knowing you have a quarterback who made his first career start the year prior, so he's needing to see that development when he has 5 guys in front of him who he knows are going to give him time and give him options. Because, I mean, we could people are saying that we want Marcel Reed to be a pocket passer, we want him to throw the ball, but we know where his strength is. It's on the ground, it's with his feet. He can run the ball and he can juke guys like few other can.
Yeah,
And so to have 5 guys in front of him who he can trust and who we know are going to give him that time is a huge privilege. Which in my next superlative was unsung heroes, and I feel like you could argue that the O line could fall into that category too.
yeah, 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 for sure. Unsung heroes, I might actually go, and I don't know how unsung he is at this point, but I would say tight end and Nate Burkitcher.
I had the same one.
I
I
mean,
had that
obviously, like, I mean, the touchdown in the Notre Dame game made it to where all of a
was
sudden
not unsung.
everybody
Yeah.
knew his
Yeah.
name. But I mean, he came in. We all thought primarily as a blocking tight end,
Yeah.
um, but has proven to be a weapon in the passing game. He's a weapon at the goal line, which
Yeah, playing
I don't think
fullback.
any of us saw going into the year.
No.
Yeah, and just a guy that, I mean, I think is just a testament to him that they're finding ways to use him, and finding ways to get the ball in his hands. And like, gosh, what a, like, just a, I think, unexpected blessing, having a guy like that. Where, look, I mean, he came in from Nebraska, like, very unheralded. I know,
Mhm.
I know Ryan Broniger over at Texas was like the lone person who was trying to, like, tell us, like, no, like, this guy's got something. Like, there are like NFL people who are really high on him. And I mean,
Mhm.
but I mean, I think we all try to not buy into the hype too much, only because, look, we've all heard it so many times on so many different guys where it didn't pan out.
Yes.
And so it's hard to not be a little bitter and not be like, okay, sure, yeah, I'm sure he's great,
Yeah.
but we'll see. So
Right.
yeah, it's been really nice to be like, oh no, they were right. This guy this guy can do some stuff.
Well, and I mean, I had the same name written down, so we're on the same page there. But the tight end room as a whole, because I
Yeah,
had Jay Sternberger on, I was talking to him about it, saying I feel like we haven't used tight ends at all since probably you, and that's a whole nother dimension of an offense that you're going to lack if you don't have guys out there. I mean, having 2 tight ends out there in your set alongside running backs in your O line and all these receivers who can make plays is a mega blessing. And again, like many other elements of our team, something we haven't seen in 3, 4, 5 years since early Jimbo, maybe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It probably was. Yeah, it was yeah, Jace and then Jalen Weidermeyer,
Yeah, him
for
too.
a period. But and that was one of the surprising things, I think, in year one of Colin Klein, because at Kansas State he used the tight end a ton. He used it, I think, in a lot of the similar ways that we're seeing now. So that was something, walking away from last season. I think a lot of folks were a little bit surprised that we didn't see more of that. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of it was maybe they just didn't feel like they had the personnel in the room to do it the way they wanted to do it. And I tell you, like, that touchdown to Nate too. We ran it up the middle from the 1 yard line. I love that so much. Not only because just you have a tight end scoring a rushing touchdown, but it's like, but you had two tight ends in the set. Like they both go in motion,
Mhm.
and then Nate comes back and lines up as a fullback, and then you bring the receiver across. Like you're running like the fake jet motion, and then you hand it off to the guy that's now the fullback. Like after experiencing the Jimbo Fisher era, where we all just like begged for pre-snap motion and just never ever got it, except for against Alabama. Like it's just so fun to see the offense actually look like creative and see them run plays. We're like, oh, that was really neat.
Too. I think last year with Colin Klein, so many people were excited to see him come in and be offensive coordinator, and there was a little bit of lack in creativity, which I don't personally blame him for, considering you have all this drama at quarterback and you have all these guys injured. There's really only so much you can do when you're building an offense around one guy and then you bring another guy in. So last year, I guess we're not holding full. That last year was not going to be the testament of who Colin Klein was, and this year there are still some hiccups I think we've seen from inside the 5 at least, where maybe some of us wouldn't have made the play call that he does, but
Yeah,
as a whole, Colin Klein in year 2, I mean, there's 5 plus teams I can name right now who want him to be their head coach.
yeah. No, I was about to say the same thing. It's like there's no greater compliment to your offensive coordinator than the fact that other people want to hire him away to be their head coach. Which and hey, look, it's like if it happens, it happens. He's made no bones about the fact that he wants to be a head coach one day. Which why wouldn't he? Um, but the upside for A&M, I think, is even if he leaves at the end of the season, that he has left this place where it's like this is such a higher, I think, profile job for an OC than it was when Mike Elko was hired 2 years ago. That I mean, I think you trust Mike Elko implicitly to make that hire, and B, I think he's going to have his pick of almost whoever he wants.
Yes. So
But that said, Colin Klein, if you want to stick around, we'd love to
no.
have
Oh
you.
yeah.
If
No one is going to stop you. I
as
promise.
long as you want to stay, yeah.
I promise. Colin Klein, if you're watching, we would love to have you for as long as you're willing to stick around. But you were talking about Nate Borgature. Well, both were talking about Nate
Yeah,
Borgature.
yeah.
But my next superlative was going to be transfers, which we kind of just had to talk about a few of them because there's obviously a few that stick out more than others, but so many of our transfers have hit not only to the level that we were hoping and expected, but honestly way above the mark. I don't think anyone could have, at least like just the receivers, Casey and Mario. If we
Yeah.
just talked about them, I mean, we could talk about them for probably the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, even I think the most optimistic folks out there, and look, there's a lot of beat reporters and folks in the preseason saying like, look, these guys both look really good, um, but I don't think anyone foresaw this
No,
level from those guys, and so yeah, so that's just been it's just so crazy to take that from a position where has been a weakness, like you said, probably since Christian Kirk. Going on like 7-8 years, to saying like this is one of the top groups in the country, um, to the point that you've got guys like Terry Bussey and Ashton Bethel Roman that you're like they struggle to get him enough receptions because
yeah.
I,
I mean, it's what can
they're
you do?
great, but they're not Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion right now.
Yeah. But
Um,
and to your point too, part of it has been the coordinator aspect of it, of just like not being able to create an offense that sets up a receiver room for success.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. And that's and look, some of that is quarterback too.
Yeah.
And just whether it's injuries or anything else, just the revolving door at quarterback that A&M's had the past 5 years. Um, and hey, like knock on wood, we're 8 games in with Marcel. If we could get the first season since 2020 where we actually had the same quarterback for the entire year, that would be fantastic. And so that definitely plays a role too. And it being Marcel's kind of the first time where he spent the entire offseason as the starter, his
Yes.
second season in Colin Klein's offense. So I think, yeah, all of that comes together to make this what it's been.
Well, it's fun now to talk about the carousel at quarterback because you can look at the landscape of college football. One, Marcel is great. Marcel is healthy. Marcel is thriving. Year two under the system. I think any Aggie here is very happy to have him, and we are pushing the Heis Marcel campaign as far as we can. But outside of that, you get to watch guys like Haynes King and Connor Wegman, and even Eli Stowers, if you want to throw that name out there, killing it where they
Yeah,
are.
and
So
that's something where I kind of go into like there's like an alternate universe out there where we're not very good. We're like 5-3 or something like that right now, and we're watching Haynes King be 7-1 and Connor Wigman like killing it at Houston, and we're like lamenting like it's like the battered Aggie syndrome all over again of like, oh, we had these great quarterbacks and we let them get away, and now this guy's a spare, and we're just cursed forever. So yeah, so it makes it a lot easier to like truly root for those guys and be happy for all the success they're having when we're also having success here, and we know that we ended up with the right guy.
yes. And so it is like we have talked about. It is a lot more fun to sit back and watch other teams play football when your team is sitting undefeated and you can breathe a little and you feel a little more inspired to be a little more feisty
Yeah.
online or whatever you want to do, but you can back it up. You have guys out there who are
Yep.
backing it up for you. Because I mean, they obviously want it more than we do, and we want it a lot. So that's very nice to know that all the guys that are taking the field and suiting up every week are fighting for their lives. And I think this bye week couldn't have come at a more perfect time because five five games in the SEC in a row, no matter where those teams stand, is a lot.
Yeah, and I think also too, it's come at a very good time, both this bye and the Notre Dame one, where I feel like it's probably A&M's two like most emotional wins of the season. And it's
Mhm.
that time where it's like if you had another game in 7 days, you might worry a bit more about kind of the hangover and guys kind of
Yeah.
spending a little too long dwelling on the big win from the week before. Um, so having both of those games followed by a bye where you kind of feel like you actually can revel in that victory a little more than you would otherwise, um, has been really nice. Just and then like they said, kind of get healthy and then get locked back in for the last 4 games. And look, and as much as I know, like anti SEC folks like to rag on it, um, I think the schedule also sets up really nicely as well, having that game against Sanford the week before Texas, because
Yeah.
that's not a bye week, but it's about as close as you can get to a bye week without having one.
Yes.
All
Which
like all due respect to the Sanford Bulldogs, I, unlike Kirk Herbstreit, know what their logo is.
yes.
Um, but I mean, but that's a game where you kind of know you can sleepwalk through it and probably still be okay. And a game where you hopefully are not going to walk out of that kind of battered and bruised and limping into the next week.
Right. Because there's a very which probably no one would have said this week one, week two. A very likely scenario: you walk into DKR 11-0.
Yeah, which is nuts.
I mean, I think as the weeks have gone on, I keep saying more and more things that I would have been shocked to have even considered a possibility in July or June.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, because if you had asked me, yeah, in August, I would have said like that the absolute max ceiling would be 11-1, and I was like,
Mhm.
that's like everything goes right, like everything that we believe positively about this team comes true. I I would have said like there's too many losable games on the schedule. We're gonna get tripped up by someone somewhere. But yeah, it's like, but at this point, 2/3 of the way through, and I think you look at the rest of the schedule and you say it, not to say that these teams can't beat us because they can, because almost any SEC game is losable.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, but you look at it and say, not only do I think we could win the rest of these games, I think
We
you can
should.
make a case we should win the
Yeah.
rest of these games, which is, yeah, like you said, as an Aggie, kind of a very strange place to be.
It's a weird feeling because it's a feeling we haven't had before, so it's kind of, what do I even do with all of this?
Yeah, you're like,
So,
what do I do with my hands? I just
yeah, I kind of am just sitting because I prep for this every week, and I'm like, okay, we keep winning. There are a lot of good things to talk about. There's not really many problems, glaring issues that I have to bring up. I mean, I had a question that was like, is there anything that you're worried about as we continue the season? But I don't know if there's
eh.
any glaring holes.
I mean, I
But
think
if you want to be picky, I'm sure.
yeah,
But
yeah. I was like, I think you can worry about just can they keep up that mindset for, because now it's like, especially if you go to the playoff, it could be a 16 game season.
yeah,
And so it's like, can you keep up that level of intensity for that long? But that's all just conjecture because at this point, this team is not given any indication that's going to be a problem.
yes. Which we're talking about the playoffs. We're talking about Atlanta. I don't. I mean, I can talk about jinx and superstition, whatever. But I am going, like we're talking about. I'm buying in. I believe that this team can and should be in Atlanta come December 5th, 6th, whatever day it is. If that happens, no, let me say when that happens, who who would you expect to be on the opposite side of the ball?
I think you got to say Bama at this point. Now, granted, there's a lot of teams in that one loss SEC
Yeah,
column too. Yeah, I mean, you still as as much as they struggled, Texas is still there.
yeah.
Ole Miss is there. Vandy's there. I'm sure is Tennessee. Are they one loss
I
SEC?
think they're two lost now.
Okay, okay. But yeah, I mean, but there's still a lot that could happen. But it sure feels like A&M and Bama are kind of the two at the top at the moment, which I mean, on the one hand, it would be great, like if you're going to try to win your first SEC championship, I feel like that would make it even more special if you do have to take down Alabama to do it. Um, that said, like if you somehow lucked into a different draw, I don't think people would be too upset about avoiding them
I'm sure
either.
it'll end up in the end. Let's talk about that with the LSU game too. It is more special to do it in Death Valley at night than for it to just be some random 11 a.m. game. So either side of the coin, when we end up in Atlanta, I think most people would be on the same page as you. Alabama. Wait, what did I just say? I think I said Alabama already. But Alabama's going to be on the other side of that ball. I would, if I was a betting woman, which I'm not, that's what I expect. But like you said, it's crowded right now. It is still very crowded. All we can do is take care of our side of the ball. At least this weekend, we can kind of watch and see how the dominoes fall and maybe see a couple of those teams fall a little further and create some more space up there.
Yeah, oh yeah, I mean for sure you got Texas Vandy, so, where one of them's guaranteed to get a second loss.
Yeah, which I would have never painted that one to be an exciting game, but I will be seated for that one.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like, who thought that game was going to have huge playoff implications, and it was going to be more so for Vandy than it was Texas.
There's a lot of things that have been crazy this season, but that is probably one. If you told someone that 5 years ago, there's not a shot a single person on this planet would probably believe what you're saying.
Yeah,
So we are looking very favorable right now. With that being said, I have to give my shout out, which, as we talked about, this could go to almost anyone that game, a 49-25 win. I wanted to give it to Tommy Moffitt. I was very highly considering giving this MVP spot to Tommy Moffitt. He got his Gatorade bath, so I'm going to count that as his recognition for the week. But I had to give it to KC
nice.
because I have a very special place in my heart for special teams. I had a bit of a similar feeling that I did for Bama with A-Chain that I did for KC on his punt return. He's only had one other one this season, right? That I can remember.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He had that one, yeah, against UTSA, first game of the
hmm
year.
And he's just had some big plays this year that have just missed. I know there was that big throw with Marcel. And so for him to have two touchdowns this game, one of them being a momentum changing punt return. I mean, being in that stadium and just seeing him run his way down the field was a very unrivaled feeling. So he gets my nod this week, but you could probably name anyone who suited up and saw the field, and no one would argue that they were a shining star of this week. I mean, Marcel had 2 turnovers, yes, but one of his better performances of the season.
Yeah, yeah. And if it was me, I would say Marcel only because I feel like it was the first time they really did kind of unleash him in the running game
Mhm.
fully. And I don't know how much of that is based on what
Design.
LSU was doing.
Yeah.
Because I think you saw like a lot of teams this year kind of try to like contain him in the pocket, where they said like, okay, we're not going to try to sack him, we're just going to kind of keep a pocket around him and not give him running lanes. And LSU didn't do that. LSU said we're going to come after you, and I think they paid the price for it.
Oh,
But yeah, I think despite the 2 turnovers, um, he just I think probably maybe the most in control I think we've seen him be. And as much as that the second quarter had its struggles, we didn't see that kind of like quarter and a half lull that the offense sometimes go through.
mhm,
Because even on the drives where we turned it over, it's like one of them was in the end zone, the other one was in LSU territory. It's like they were
right.
moving the ball the
Mhm.
entire night.
Yeah. I mean, coming into the second half and going 35 and 7, 35-7, I think that's right.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find a lull in the midst of that. So I would say this game was probably our most complimentary on the year too. Again, the first half was a bit of an anomaly, but as a whole, watching Death Valley clear out by mid third quarter is not something that many people get to experience. And I've watched that ending, which was it ABC that was covering this game?
Yeah, yeah, it was.
The coverage they did just post game, I'm very thankful for because I've rewatched so many times.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about being the night game is that there's no other game they're trying to like rush off and switch over to,
Mhm.
and so yeah, they do kind of like let it breathe, and like when there is like a nice scene to cover, they really like kind of let you bask in it. And yeah, and it was just like a you know 3 minute infomercial for A&M at the end of that game essentially.
So I made the trip. I had a lot of fun. I got to meet Drew, so that's a big high point for me. So shout out Drew. But I had a lot of fun. I bet everyone who was not there in person still had equal amounts of fun. But we get to sit here, be 8-0, and we just get to talk about football. And it's fun because we're on a roll and we get to go into the bye and just sit and just chill. And I have no complaints. I
Yeah, yeah, 10 out of 10, no notes.
no notes. So with that, Robert, let the people know kind of what you're up to, where they can find you outside of here.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so as you mentioned to kick off the episode, I'm the managing editor over at goodbullhunting.com, which is SB Nation's Texas A&M team site. Um, and we obviously do a lot of just, of like your standard coverage for A&M, but we also try to be a little bit more lighthearted, kind of find the fun in sports. I think we spent years trying to like kind of find the joy and the fun in the pain of A&M sports. So it's been nice to just try to find the fun in the fun. Um, but then also you can find me on X pretty much every day over at RCB05.
Yeah, I think if you're involved in Twitter, your tweets like that come across their page. Would be very
Much
interesting.
appreciated.
And if you are missing, don't miss out anymore. He's on Twitter every day, like so many of us are. So follow him there. And while you're following and subscribing and liking, go subscribe to this channel on YouTube because it would mean a lot to all of us. And it would guarantee a win out of the bye. And it would guarantee a spot in SEC championships for sure. So go through a subscription over on the channel if you're watching on Twitter or if you're watching on YouTube, just click the button right now. But Robert, thank you so much for joining me tonight. We kind of got to chat it up because there's no game this weekend, so we got to pick apart this team and all the
Yeah,
fun memories they brought us, and hopefully will continue to bring us.
God willing.
So again, thank you for joining me. Thank you everyone who joined us tonight to watch. We we are going to just sit back and relax this weekend, and we will see you all next weekend for our game against Missouri. But until then, enjoy your Halloween weekend. Stay safe, everyone. Happy October. Gig 'em.